courses.
Well, I mean, maybe they could build one for him.
Yeah, they can build one.
Pork barrel politics.
Yes, it's just a carpetbagger.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's basically on that. Now, here's one that let's get to see what Sky News UK has brought up. And I think this might be a good way of summarising what's actually happened in the UK, because this has not gone in the same direction as the other set of elections have. So let's get this random journalist, Ed Conway, to summarise what's happening.
Well, it's a big political moment, but it's also a big data moment when you look at some of the numbers that we've had here. In a sense, there's three narratives intertwined here. We've got that by-election result that we heard about, first of all, in Runcorn, a massive win for Reform with an enormous swing in terms of the vote. But perhaps most striking of all, have a look at this, the majority of 6. That is basically the tightest we have ever seen. I want to show you, actually. Let me show you just a bit of historical context here. Looking back at the closest by-elections in modern history, in living memory, there is really nothing to compare with it. Maybe something kind of about 100 years ago, but nonetheless, 6. These are all really tight results. This is an incredibly knife-edge result. We've never seen anything at all like it, but nonetheless, it went for Reform, so that by-election starting that particular story. And then, of course, we've had all these mayoral results as well. And again, it's Reform in Greater Lincolnshire, Reform in Hull and East Yorkshire as well. The Conservatives, they're hanging on in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And actually, in the west of England, Labour doing better than expected, the Greens not doing quite as well as expected. But still, just look at that light blue there. And if we look at this, not just the mayoral results, not just that by-election, but also the share of seats in the local elections, because here you're talking about across the shires in England, historically, and we're going back to the 1970s here, historically, just look at how dominant the Conservatives were, and then Labour as well. So Conservatives and Labour there, really dominating with the vast majority of all of the seats that are won there. And now we have this result here. Just look at Reform. They're completely tearing that apart. And if I show it in one other way, what we'll do is we'll take that and that, so the results, all of these seats for Labour and for the Conservatives, look back over history and just see how much of the share they had. And indeed, for most of history, it's been utter two-party dominance all the way through to where we are now. A complete sea change. And even 2013, which was good for UKIP, they never managed to contend with that. So that is an enormous issue. And when you look at what this might imply across the country as a whole, which we can do, because Michael Thrasher has gone through the numbers, worked out what the national estimated share would be, and it is incredibly striking. Let me just give you a bit of context to this. This is the first time that not the Conservatives, not the Labour Party have been in front here. So it's the first time that that's two-party dominance of this national estimated share, going back basically in living memory, that Reform or indeed any other third party has been ahead. And just look how far ahead, 32% share versus 19% for the Labour Party, 18% for the Conservative Party, and the Lib Dems there actually up a little bit at 16%. A really striking set of results that completely changes the picture of politics in this country.
Ed, thank you.
And,
I think we do forget sometimes that the UK used to be essentially an empire, and we've got people who are voting for like Reform UK in a desperate effort to make an empire again. But yeah, England, the UK has been cooked now for like, I don't know, 20 plus years. If they fixed the water supply yet? Have they removed the lead from the water? Have they checked for gas leaks in all the homes? Because, you know, England is just fucking cooked.
Yeah.
I just look at that final data set and I'm slightly skeptical. But I am concerned more generally. I think that last data set was potentially overselling the situation. But I think what it does talk to is a larger concern around, which we are seeing right across the world, around the voter basis looking for parties and looking for they're looking for homes. They're looking for parties that are not.
Yeah, stay on that, because this is very interesting to me. You can see where the votes have split off. Like, you got the Conservatives, okay, we've got a whole bunch of, I don't know, you've got 10% that probably went over to Reform. The Greens are pretty stable for the most part.
So same with the Lib Dems.
Same with the Lib Dems. But yeah, there seems to be a split here between the Conservatives and the Labour. Like, how many people turned out to vote? Where people...
there was one of the
I'm not happy with this as a projection out to a nationwide election, because the voting percentage at local body is completely different to the voting percentage at general elections. So To project out is not helpful.
And also watching one of the clips, I watched one earlier, they sat there and said, when they were talking to voters who voted for reform, and they couldn't tell any difference. Like, they didn't understand there was a difference between local body and general elections.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so they're voting based on general election stuff, but the local body's in it. But the unique thing about the UK is that the UK itself, a lot of the funds that go into local government are controlled by central government.
Yes.
So you can have a situation where you can have, like we could sit there and say right now, like Wellington City Council, a great example of the fact that it's got a Labour Green leading council with a national government who's literally trying to sit down there and exercise, look, we can control you, we can do all sorts of things. And the thing is, in the UK, there's a lot of central government funding that goes into local councils. And depending who's in power, depends whether it's generous or sweet.
Well, that's why I was asking about the voter turnout, because, I didn't keep an eye on this election. When did this happen, the locals?
This happened Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, I do wonder if the way how Starmer has been responding to a lot of the criticism has motivated people to stay home and not turn out for their locals.
And also, the other one is there's a lot of Jeremy Corbyn Labour supporters who have left the party. Yep. So they're voting in different directions, and some of them may have gone to Reform. Because there's a lot of people who are very furious with Labour, and like the fact that Keir Starmer only got 1 million more votes than Jeremy Corbyn's 2017 election.
Yeah, so Jeremy Corbyn is like a left-wing populist. So some of those votes that went to Reform would be people that, I'll vote for this other guy because he's a populist, even though he's a right-wing populist, right? And then you probably have a bunch of people that go, well, I'll give some of my votes to an independent or to the Greens. And then you have a whole bunch of other people. And this is why I think having the numbers, how many people turned out to vote, would be very interesting. But I suspect that a bunch of people just decided to stay home.
Very, very plausible. So this is showing one of the by-elections, which I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to a recount. There's no more so this is the ones of where. So this one here, I'm going to have to zoom this out slightly. So this will show the map of the UK, and so this is currently on areas where Reform gained voters. The Lib Dems, you can obviously gather the bigger the circle, the bigger the gain. Labour, which you can tell is a very, very tiny dot in there of Buckinghamshire. The Greens, that's a little bit better results they've gone around. Independents, you can see Lancashire went up on there. Buckinghamshire also had gains in there. And the Conservatives, well, that is not even registered on the map. But here's where you can see which areas have lost councillors. And the Conservatives have had a very big wipeout all across the board. Whereas if we look at Labour, some of the areas they've had some wipeout, but not quite to the same extent. The Lib Dems, really, they've held strong. They've only lost like Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. If we look at the Greens, they're not even losing. And if we look at independents, a couple of areas where they've dropped down, and Reform UK have not lost at all anything. So it's quite intriguing, actually, how the UK has gone on this. But it's interesting how different parts of the world are functioning on their approaches.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the numbers for turnouts.
Yeah, which I'm not sure if there is. And also the weird thing about the UK is when they have what is known as called a four-year recurring term policy, but every council has things slightly differently. Some councils it's all or nothing at the elections. Other councils it's what you call a quarter here and here, or it's a weird way it runs, and it varies from council to council. And so it's not like New Zealand where every 3 years we just have where all the seats of local bodies come available. You have an absolute nightmare finding out who your candidates are, and you get a booklet that tells you 200 words that you can't make a fair and judgment call, and you vote. But UK, they do things very, very differently, and they split out their elections a bit.
Okay, so like here in New Zealand, I'm just looking at the House of Commons library. In England, they tend to have low turnouts like here in New Zealand for local body elections, which could be a reason why we're seeing the numbers we're seeing, because typically one thing I have noticed is that Conservatives tend to be more motivated to go out and vote than Progressives.
Progressives want to try and make sure it works, like that when they go out, they want to make sure it works in progress, which, I mean, I don't know if the UK for local bodies, whether I think they still have polling booths. But also the other issue in the UK is when it comes to voting, you can only go to the polling booth the nearest to your house.
Right, okay.
Yeah, whereas in New Zealand, you can go to any polling booth in the electorate and cast a normal vote. And in or you can go and do a special vote. Now, Nick has just sent something across.
Well, here's an interesting trend too I've just looked at. Last year for the general elections was one of the lowest turnouts in quite a while, in a decade.
So Nick has sent this through about... Now, this is about local election turnouts?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Oh, good, okay.
So we've got data.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah. So that's showing basically the turnouts of elections across different years.
So that local body turnout is fairly similar to the local body turnout here in New Zealand. It's around
that's
about
low.
30%, which is kind of what we get here in New Zealand, which is pretty low, but it's not greater or any lower than what we get here.
Yeah.
Well, this is a good time to encourage people that are watching. Please vote in this year's local elections.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Make sure that you do vote wherever you live.
I don't care. I'll turn up to your house and drag you to the ballot box if I have to.
Well, I'm just hoping Wellington City Council actually puts polling booths at local fruit and vegetable markets each week for special voting. That's something I'd like to see them do, and I'd like Hutt City Council to do the same thing in their area because they have got markets. Upper Hutt, please put one at Brewtown on Sunday. Kapiti Coast District Council, please put one at Paraparaumu Beach. Actually, that one's not hard to actually do. I can make a phone call and that could possibly actually happen because I do have contact to. Well, I'm on a good first name basis with most of the sitting elective on Kapiti Coast District Council.
For the IT politician people, nerds, geeks that are watching, when can we do online voting? Because that seriously needs to be a thing for local body elections.
I would like to know what is a way that you can make it work that keeps the integrity in place. One thing that might be a stepping stone step that could be looked at is saying if your voting paper is emailed to you, and you can print it off and put it in the drop box at the local supermarket. I think that might be a starting point.
Well, I mean, we can look at the local iwi elections, which I voted in. But what essentially happened was I received a letter that had a code in it,
Yes.
and had an address in it, and I just put in the address in my search engine, and put in the code, and then I got to vote.
Yeah.
And I think
but that's subject to you actually receiving the letter.
yes, it is.
And that's the thing. That's where local bodies can fall short, is if you don't receive the post or you haven't updated the details or something in there.
Well, it doesn't have to be either or. It can just be another option if people want to vote online.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd love it to have it if there's a way that you could vote online. You get emailed when your voting paper is complete, it gets converted to a PDF. It emails a copy to you. It emails a copy off to the voting place and comes out on the printer. And if you wanted to, you can print out your own copy, throw it in a drop box at the supermarket. So when it gets scanned in, it will say, oh, recognise that barcode, we've got that. Oh, they match. This vote has not been tampered with. And have something like that work through the system so that we can at least, we have paper backup options, but you can give that paper backup to the voter. Because that's something else I'd love to actually have is, try to retain your old voting papers. That's something we don't have under our secret ballot system.
Yeah, I mean, it is, who was it now? Simon just mentioned before. Yes, Estonia does have online voting. We could look into their system and how they do things. India's got online voting. Japan's got online voting for local body elections. The Philippines, America. That I didn't know they had online voting for local body elections, but yes, that they do. So yes, it is. E-voting is something that could be done. It's something we should be looking into. I think Estonia's model looks pretty good. Just reading through it now.
It's interesting about how it's run by a private company, Simon. This is the part there. Yes, but the guy who runs the private company actually is, I have found out to be the better person for the job. And he does treat his private company as if it's a public service, and you will get information out of Elections NZ, the one who does the votings in Wellington, does them in Greater Wellington. I'm not sure. I know that they do both the Huts and all the Wairarappas, and I think they do Horowhenua, and they do Wanganui. The guy who runs it does actually treat it better. Like, if it wants to be taken over by central government, I would recommend the guy running it from the private company to be the person who heads it if it got taken over by the Electoral Commission. So, but it's whether you have the right or the wrong person in the job. And in this case, Elections NZ, we've got the right person.
Any thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I have sat in on meetings with the person that we're talking about, Sam.
Right.
And I mean, that person is very, very good at what they do, and so I would tend to agree with that. I don't know if I'd want it being that particular job being given to anyone else. I know there's a high degree of trust with elected officials and with the councils that run elections. So yeah, I wouldn't want it being given to anybody else at this moment. I know that the campaign officials have a high degree of trust as well. So yeah, I think.
And the thing is,
he does a very good job.
He has spoken highly about us as an organisation and has gone to bat at the right points, and word of mouth has happened. Because, as I say, we had one particular council who made contact with us for it's in the ballot that wasn't in our draft schedule, and it's and the recommendation came from Warwick Lane.
The strange thing about Elections NZ is that they run online elections for iwi. And also for company boards and other types of clients as well. So they're completely set up to do online elections. The barrier just sits within DIA at the moment, and there's a hard barrier because GCSB have just said no, and it's a hard no, and there's just no going forward from that point on. But all of the infrastructure, all the technology exists. They could roll it out as a test, almost
for local bodies. Yes,
for local bodies as a test.
They could do, say, a small council. If they chose Carterton could be a good council to try it out on, because they have quite a low number of people there. Carwell District Council could be another one they could try it on, because they have they're single town councils that could be tried as a let's see how it goes, what works, what doesn't, and all that sort of thing there as well.
I think for rural areas, this would be a very good way to encourage people to come out and vote.
Yeah, I think the other issue around this is I'm not sure, and I know this sounds kind of strange, whether there would be an interest in boosting voting level. I know that sounds strange, but sometimes it can be quite positive to keep voter levels down. And I know that sounds kind of strange and counterintuitive, but sometimes it is in the interest of incumbent councillors to keep the voting levels down. So there is a bit of a institutional bias against increasing voting participation levels. It's certainly if you're an incumbent, if you're a new councillor who wants to get in, you certainly want to boost the voting participation levels. There are some institutional arguments for and against. But I think a time will come when certainly a new generation of younger people just go, why aren't we doing this? And it needs to happen.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. Who's got the order, paper?